Hello and welcome to this little short video on just getting yourselves set up on Unity. I've shared with all of you that we wanted to do some skills development videos so that you can muck about with some things and maybe try things that you need to refresh yourselves on, or maybe have a go at something new. So this video is your first steps or your reminders into Unity. So I'm just going to go through some really basic stuff in a moment, give you a little bit of a browse through some of the main areas in Unity that we would be looking at, and how you might kind of download it and install it, and some of the kind of different elements of that that you might need to consider. All right, so let's get into it. First of all, just to say that you can find links to a number of the software that we use on this page. So you might be watching this and you might be new to the college, you might be in a lower sixth and you've not jumped into Unity or Blender yet, or you might just need a refresher if you're in the upper sixth. All right, but just because of the situation at the moment, you can go to our little mini website. So it's haveringgaming.co.uk. I'll leave a link to this in the description and on the end of this video so that you can see it. And then you've got either a link down here where it says links and resources during the COVID lockdown, or there is a little kind of hyperlink off of that page so that you can jump to our COVID resource page and have a little look at some of the descriptions of the software that we use there, especially if you're new to us. Right down the bottom there, you'll see that you've got a little link to Unity, so you can jump off to their homepage there, which will take you to a page that looks very similar, if not exactly the same as this one. All right. And Unity is the game engine of choice that we use for our 3D elements and developing your understanding of text-based syntax from what you've developed and what you've understood with the block type of programming that we've done in a lower sixth. And again, if you're new to us, and that's the route that we take on it on our course. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to go from here and you can click on get started, and it will take you to this page. Now, for some reason mine defaults to business, yours might as well, but we don't want to go to business. So click on the individual tab and you'll see that you've got some different options. Now, one thing I would say is that when I was doing this video, I hadn't realised, because I hadn't needed to kind of jump to this page for a while, that they're now looking at doing a student sign up. Now, I'll look at this more when we're back and whether or not this is something that we could look at doing, so that we've got a student login rather than the personal one that we use, which I'm going to go through in a second. It's pretty much the same thing, and you can do whatever you need to do in both. The nice thing about this one is that we do get some access to some of their learn options, and Unity themselves do some good tutorials with some excellent resources that we could maybe look at using so that we can develop your skills further as we go through. Yeah, I'm not sure on that because it needs to be verified and it needs to be synced in with GitHub. So I haven't got time to do that today because it takes a while to get through. But it might be something that we can do for your logins as we get on. So just so that you know that. So what I would do is I would go for the personal one. We're looking at the free version of Unity that we're going to use, and you're going to go through there. So when you click on Get Started here, you'll see that it takes you to another page, and when you click start here, it will download an installer for you. You can see my one there. I cancelled it because I've got mine installed already, but it will download an installer for you, and then it will walk you through installing Unity. It's not a huge program, and it's not too bad to run if we're not doing anything too hungry in terms of frame rates and bits and pieces like that. So even if you've got a mid-spec PC, or even if you've got a low-spec PC, you should be able to download some, at least have a look at some of the bits and pieces that we're going to do, especially some of the first bits I'm going to do. We're going to keep it really simple and just look at how we kind of get used to using Unity and working our way around it. All right. One thing I'll highlight, especially if you are in the upper sixth, what you might want to do, instead of going through that route, you might just want to Google Unity Download Archive. Put that into Google and you should get to a page that looks similar to this. Okay, this gives you all of the releases that Unity have done and put out. Okay, that's important because you might need to remember that you have a different version of Unity at college. We haven't been in for a while, so we haven't been able to update it or check the updates or anything like that. I think the version that we have at college and again, this is a best guess, is this one down here, 2019.2.21. Yeah, sorry, I just went quiet there. I just double checking myself. I'm pretty sure that was the last time we updated it at college. I might not be correct, okay, so please don't quote me on that, absolutely, but just so that you're aware that we might have a slightly different version at college, but once we get back we'll be able to check that, and once we kind of start again in September we'll probably have a different version anyway, because we will do an update for the start of the new year. But just so you know that the archive's there. All right, so that's where you start really, and that's where you start looking at downloading Unity and going through it. I'm just going to show you what it now looks like. So let me get to the right page. I'm going to disappear, but you'll still be able to hear me. There we go. So there's Unity opened up. I'm just going to add a source in that you'll see when you load Unity in for the first time. If you just bear with me a second, because it disappears when you open Unity, but I'm just going to add it in so that you can see it on screen now. And it's the hub basically. So Unity installs in a slightly different way to how it used to, and what you can do now, or what you have to do now I should say, I'm just going to see if this picks up. It might not. Let's see. Are you picking this up? No, we've just got a black screen. Okay, I will talk you through it. Oh, I might be able to. Let's just jump to my second display. See if it. Marvelous. Okay, I can show you this way. All right, so this is the Unity Hub. So when you load it up for the first time, you will have a screen that looks like this. Now I've got some kind of versions of different bits and pieces that I've been working on and here, so you can see your list of your projects here, and what I would say is it's always good to keep in mind that you should sign in when you log into Unity for the first time. It will ask you some details, some emails. That email's key to remember because you'll use it to log in each time, so just make sure it's one that you know and you remember. Your college one is fine, if you've got one, or if you've got a Gmail account or something along those lines will be fine. It's key as well. I'm logged in here because you can use a cloud-based system that they use. We won't look at that just today, but just so that you know, it can upload and download stuff from the cloud as well. You get a bit of cloud space. This hub is quite good. You've got all your projects listed there, so you can click and open up the game that you might want to. You've got some idea of some of the projects and the tutorials. That's what I was saying about that learn function that Unity have. If we can get you signed up for that, then these are quite nice, and you've got some really nice assets to play around with and walk you through kind of how you use Unity and developing your skills into it. But like I say, we're not on there at the moment, so we'll see how that goes, and you can maybe have a little look at that yourselves while you've got some time. The last thing is in there is installs. You can have more than one version of Unity installed on your machine, and through the hub you can choose what version of Unity you might want to open your projects up in. Okay, so that's why I just mentioned especially to the upper about those that archive page. So you might have a couple of versions you might have the latest version so that you get all of the benefits, and then you might have a slightly older version if we're linking it into anything that you might be working on with other people or with the machines at college at the moment. All right, so you would have this loaded up and you would choose your project and open it from there. When you add a new one, I'm just going to go through the process with you for now. You'll see that you've got different options. So you've got 2D or 3D, and you've got some other bits and pieces as well. We will kind of use these two options in the main. Project name, obviously, give it a decent name so that you know what you're working on, and so that you can find it later on. The location is also something to keep in mind. I've got a folder on my setup that I have all of my Unity folders in, so that they're all in one place and I can go back to them. And again, once we're in college, you'll need to make sure that this is set up properly so that all of your files and your projects are saved in the right place. Okay, so just a reminder on that. All right, you would set it up, give it a name, click create, and away you go. All right, I'm going to do by the magic of this and just click on here, and this is one that I made earlier. All right, so you've got this is your main screen, and you can't see my menus for whatever reason. That's a bit annoying. Let's just jump to mine so that I can see it. There we go. So you've got four main areas. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, four main areas that you are going to work through, and a couple of little bits on this bottom one that I'm going to go through and share with you. When you open up Unity for the first time, you'll see that you've got in there a sample scene. So you'll have this folder in there, and if I double click, you've got this sample scene in there already. Now I would just add at this point a word of caution, especially for those of you that are going to be working in teams and working in groups as you go through, because if you all start working on this same sample scene in different files and then start sharing things in different ways, it can cause problems. So as a matter of course, and to get used to it, I would always right click, create a new scene, and just, I'm just going to call this one test so that we know what it is, and just create a new scene that isn't labeled up sample scene. Once you've done that, you can double click on it. You'll know that you're in it because you'll see it change up here. Okay, and it's also changed up here. All right, so we're in test of test, so I called it the same thing twice. Okay, so that's just a matter of course. I like just to make up my own scene, so I'm not using that sample scene as we go through. All right, so let's go through and remind ourselves of the different areas. So we've got our assets folder down here in our project window. Okay, and this is where you're going to store everything for your game. Okay, whether it's scenes that you create like I just showed you, whether it's scripts that we create through this, whether it's assets that we import in, whether it's objects that we create within Unity, they're all going to sit in here, the main files of them. Okay, so this is where you'll go back and forth from to create things and store things. Okay, so that's your project window. We'll come back to this in a minute because there's a few other tabs in here that will be useful. When we're in our scene, and this is the look of our scene at the moment, so there's nothing in it at the moment. Okay, so this is where we will view and where we will work and where we will change different things for our level, for our scene in this setup. Okay, in here as well, we've also got a game view, so we can click on this tab here and we can see what we will see as soon as we hit play and we start playing this scene. Okay, at the moment we don't see anything, because we've just got a camera and a light in there and nothing else. Okay, but you can see how it's different. So here's our camera, here's our light represented by these two little objects, and if I select on the camera, which we need to do, you can see where it's pointing, and we get a preview as well, so we can see what's going on. All right, so this is our scene area where we'll work, and then you can see a game view of that as well. We'll cover the asset store at some point in the future. Okay, so when we've got things in our scene, and I've just done it, you can see that they are all listed here in this panel here. This is your hierarchy. So this is where you will drag things in from your project window into your hierarchy that you want to appear in this scene. Okay, so this is where we create stuff, and we might source stuff that we're using more than once, and we can store that in our project window, and we drag it into our scene here. Okay. Once we've got things in our scene, so like I said, we've got a directional light and we've got a main camera that goes in there by default, we can select on them and we can move them about. So just above our hierarchy, we've got some different options. So we'll start with the move tool, and you can see here that we get these paddles with the arrows heads off the top coming off of our camera. And if I click on one, then it will only move on that axis. All right, so that's moving on our x-axis. And then I can click on this one and it will move on our Y. And then I can click on this one and it will move on our Z. Okay. If I click and hold this middle square, then I can move it freehand. All right. I, for one, hate doing this because I always lose where my object is in my world space, and I like to know where things are exactly. So I tend to, even if I'm moving it kind of fairly freehand anyway and just dropping it in, I normally kind of will move things along my arrows and just have it where I want it. Okay, so that's your move tool. You've got other tools up here as well. So you've got a rotate tool, and you'll see that you get a similar setup, but this time we've got the same color lines that represent our axes, but they are just in a slightly different style. So we can see when we turn our camera, and you can see that preview there, how we're turning. Okay, and you can do that across all of the different axes. All right, so there's our Y, so that you get the idea. So that's rotate. We can't really show you the next one without dropping in another object. So let's drop in an object, nice and simple. There's a few ways of doing this. So we can right click here, and you'll see that we've got a few windows that come up, and we'll go to 3D object, and we'll just add in a cube. All right, and you'll see that our cubes appeared here. It's because we've selected on the rotate tool. That's the handles that it's gone at the moment, and we've got it in our hierarchy up here. You'll see that because we've done this directly into the scene, it's appearing in the scene at the moment, but we haven't got anything new in our project. But that's fine. If we wanted to save it, we can. There is a way of saving things into our project window so that we could use it in other scenes, but because we're just using this cube and this basic object in the scene, it's sitting in our hierarchy. And you can again see that I've selected on it, and I've got some information over here in the scene where I can move and I can change what it's going to do, and we'll come to the inspector in a minute. So the next tool along is the scale tool, and we've got different handles this time, but hopefully there's some familiarity with them now. Okay, so this time we can scale along the axes. So if I click and hold on this handle on this square, and I can stretch out my cube on the Z axis, and I can change the scale on there, and it'll only change the Z. And then equally I can come here and I can change the X, and I can change the Y. Alright, so you can start playing around with your object and how it might change and alter. Alright, I think if I'm right, if I just click on my game view, there you go, you can see our cube in the game world now as well. Okay, and in the same way, once you've got maybe a size, but you maybe want to make the whole thing a little bit smaller, so we want to keep it this rectangle shape maybe, but we want to shrink it down a little bit. If we click on the middle square, then it will do the same as what the other ones would do, so it will shrink down in uniform. Okay, so that's always handy if you're trying to match things up and get your scale, the size of things right. You can make it nice and big so that you can see it, and then you can get the right scale sorted as you go through. One thing that we forgot, sorry, is the hand tool, and this allows you to just navigate around your world. Okay, and if you hold down the Alt key when you're on this tool, you can change your perspective as well. Okay, so you can spin around things in different ways. So you've got the hand tool there, and then you've got the Alt key down at the same time, and then you can go around there. All right, so we'll leave the other tools for now. We'll come back to them as and when we need them. All right, they're the main ones that you need to have a little look at, and then we'll stay selected on our cube, and we'll just come over here to our inspector. Now our inspector has got all of the elements that are on our cube. So we've got a transform component, so we can see where we're changing our position or our rotation or our scale. So maybe you saw that changing as I was playing around with the different sizes. We've got a mesh renderer, so we can see our cube. So at the moment it's not got anything very exciting on it. It's got this default grey material that we can see here, but this mesh renderer shows the cube. So if I just uncheck that, you'll see that it goes, and you can see it's gone in the game view as well. All right, our cube is still there, but we've just turned off the fact that we can see it. So we've just turned off the renderer so that we've kind of hidden it from view for a moment. So we'll turn it back on because we don't want to lose it. And then this cube and most of the 3D objects, when you bring them into Unity, have got a box collider on by default, which means that we can bump into it, or we can use it as a trigger, and different bits and pieces as we start playing around with it. And we'll go into that in more detail as we go on. All right, and that's our inspector, and we can add more components as we go through. So we can click here, and if I start typing, you'll see that we can get different elements coming up depending on what we want to do and how we want to change things within our objects, within our scene. All right, so we've got some sense of the navigation and how we get around Unity. What I will do is, in the next few videos, I'll start adding some bits and pieces. We'll start looking at some simple stuff and how we can create some elements within Unity and with our games. But that's just a quick preview of how you might download it and find the install and get it ready. Just a quick navigation around some of the main components of the interface, so that you have a bit of an idea of what we're looking at. What we'll do next is that we'll start looking at how we can add to that and use those to create different elements within our game. All right, so that's pretty much it for this video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add different bits and pieces as we go through. So we'll do some nice simple stuff. We'll get you used to the interface with Unity. We'll start looking at some text-based syntax and we'll use Visual Studio and how you use that and some elements of C# as we go forward. And like I say, or if you need a practice or if you want to go back and have a little play around with some coding because it's been a while, then those will be in the next videos that we put together. Okay, so hopefully that's been helpful. Bit of an idea of how you download it, get it installed and navigate around it. The next videos will have a little look at how we can start using it properly. All right, take care. I'll see you next time.